Fantastic tones for human bones.
Welcome to Fantastic Tones for Human Bones. I am Robert Woods-Ledoux. My co-host Mark Pescucci-Clifford is here.
Hello.
And today we are joined by Michael Coleman.
Hello.
Michael Coleman is at least a piano player, but many, many, many other things, right? I don't even know where the bounds really are. You're definitely a composer,
A band leader.
yeah, a producer, a vocalist. I've seen you play some percussion.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
What other logs can we throw on the fire there?
That pretty much covers the bases. Mostly, actually, what I do now is like I'm a sound engineer, which is like a funny thing. But
like live sound?
No, recording engineer.
Oh, cool. Are you working in like a studio?
Mm-hmm. That's like my day job, basically.
Is that mostly at Figure Eight?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna get there. We're gonna get all the way there.
Amazing.
I even have pinned down the moment where I feel like that the idea of becoming a recording engineer might have started for you, but that's just
wow.
Yeah. No, I'm just curious. It's a question that I highly doubt I'm correct, but we'll find out. Generally, we like to kind of start back from the beginning, and the earliest I know about you, I think, is Oberlin, but I'm curious about life before that, and where you started, where you grew up, and how old you were when you started playing, and all of that.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and I think really from like a very young age, I was always just drawn to music. Just like I loved music when I was a kid. I just remember hearing music and being like, "Whoa, this is awesome," and just but I never really. I didn't start playing an instrument very young or anything. But when I was about, I think 8, my friend, who's still a good friend of mine, was having maybe he was having like a piano recital or something. And I went to it and I was like, whoa, I can play an instrument. Like it had never occurred to me that I could do that. And so then my parents were like, yeah, if you want to do that, we can get like a teacher for you or something. And so I started studying with a teacher who she was like a piano teacher, but she was like, what do you want to learn? And I was like, well, I like the Beatles and stuff. And she was like, okay, we'll just learn Beatles songs by ear. And so we just kind of did that. Yeah. And she had me like playing classical pieces, but I could never read the music. Like I just couldn't read the music. So I'd be like, can you play it? And then I would just try to learn it by ear. So I just like, my whole upbringing with music was very much like learning by ear. And then sort of like, mostly I was just interested in like pop music. And she actually was in like hair metal bands as like a synth player. This was like the 80s, So she was like, so she would take me to like recording sessions and like studios. Like she was just really cool person. So I sort of got like this sort of introduction to like recording and playing in bands when I was really young. And also I wanted to write. I was writing songs when I was like 8. So she was like, great, we'll just work on composing songs.
Yeah.
So
I was going to ask if she was contextualizing the pop stuff in terms of like the chord progressions and immediately getting you in that world and just making sure that you were thinking that way, like harmonically, like off the bat,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we did a little bit of like theory, but mostly everything was just kind of by ear. And she'd be like, okay, you want to learn this song? Like we talked a lot about chord progressions, but it was never like, we never talked about, I don't remember learning about like sort of chord sequences as like, harmonic relationships and stuff like that. I just remember being like, I remember like 1 chord, 5 chords sort of, but even that was a little bit hazy, but she just really encouraged me to like write songs. So I wrote like, I have a lot of funny 4-track recordings from that time where I was just writing songs and like recording myself and singing, and they're all really goofy.
How many years did you study with this very unique piano teacher?
I studied with her for like 5 years, and then actually I switched to flute. I was like, I want to learn flute, and she was like, I play flute, so I studied with flute with her. and so I think I studied with her from like 8 till about 14, and
wow.
then yeah,
awesome.
And in that whole time, I really never learned to read music, which in retrospect, I'm a little bit upset with myself about, or like sort of upset with my parents for not being like, you should also learn to read music. And maybe in the end, it's a good thing. And it kind of sent me on a specific musical journey. But I feel like for the rest of my life, I've just been trying to learn to read music. And, and it's just like, you know, it's like, I never feel like I'll ever be good at it the way that I wish I was, you know?
I too am still trying to
yeah.
But that's not, I mean, I know you read music really well, Mark. I mean, I've seen you read music.
Yeah. I mean, also on piano, like I'm trying to get those chops up too, because that's a whole other practice. It's a whole other thing, you know.
It's a thing that you have to keep, you not only do you have to always trying to keep getting better at, you have to maintain it so that you don't lose it as a chop.
Yeah.
It's like,
totally.
Yeah. And, you know, Michael, I feel like personally, my reading on vibraphone has gotten over probably the past 3.5 years, or maybe 5 years. I've actually started to get to the point where I feel like I'm a good reader. But I think for a lot of the stuff that we were doing, like with Aaron, I was just feeling, you know, I had to shed so much, and then I still felt like I was making mistakes, and you know, it's crazy. And
yeah,
I'm pretty deep into playing the vibraphone, and I'm only starting to feel like I can really read a little bit.
Like, that's interesting.
Isn't it? Yeah, it's kind of nuts. But
some of my favorite musicians, though, can't read music.
Totally.
Yeah, totally. At all.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I often feel that way. Like I'll hear someone, I'm like, man, this musician's so good. And then I'm like, oh, they can't read a lick of music. And it doesn't really relate to their musicality. But I think for me, it's just some of the music that I'm interested in. I feel like, for me to go deeper into it, I wish I could read it better. Like, I feel like I'm just like kind of like slowly peeling it back. Whereas like if I was a good reader, I could like really dive into it better.
Well, I mean, going back to what you're saying about recording, I think that immediately throws my little idea.
Yeah, when did you get a 4-track recorder?
Yeah, if you're like eight.
Yeah, my parents like pretty early on, they were like, "Oh, you wanna record yourself playing music? We'll just buy you this like cheap Tascam tape player, you know, for $100 or whatever." And I was like, "Cool." And I had that thing for years. I had it for, you know, 8 or 10 years, and then eventually I replaced it with like a little digital recorder.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was always into recording music, and actually, it's funny because what you got there? Yeah, exactly. That might have been the exact one I had. Yeah,
the Porta Studio.
Yeah. When I was like sort of jumping ahead a little bit, but like in high school, I was like, I think I want to be involved in like recording. And my teacher in high school, who also was an amazing, just happened to be a great like teacher and influence on my life. He was like, oh, I know a guy who's a manager of a recording studio. And he got me an internship at a studio in Manhattan.
In high school?
I graduated early. I had like my high school was, I mean, it was fine high school, but like, I think I was like for whatever reason, I was like an exceptional student there, which like in most high schools I probably wouldn't be, but it was just like, that was the way it was. And so I ended up being able to get credits beyond, I basically got enough credits to graduate a semester early. And so I just had like 6 months with nothing to do. I mean, I was working, I had like a couple jobs, but I was like, I wanted to do music stuff. And my teacher was like, I can get you this internship. So I ended up at the studio that's like still around, and I still know the owner. And when I was there, you know, I sat in on sessions with like Louis Hayes, and like pretty big jazz sessions were happening there.
Oh, wow.
That's pretty awesome.
That's amazing.
So, I mean, which it partially is just the benefit of growing up in New York, and partially just being lucky enough to have teachers who were cool and, you know, wanted to help me out too.
Yeah. Crazy. So at that time, were you, I guess by that point you must have been well on your way within learning to improvise and being in the jazz, starting to get into the canon and all that, learning the tune.
So actually, like for me, it's a funny thing because I think like, I know a lot of people go to like jazz camps or they have jazz teachers and they kind of get into jazz, but I was like a rock musician in high school.
Uh-huh.
I played in like jam bands and like rock bands, and I played keyboards, and we improvised, but it wasn't within the jazz context at all. And I didn't understand anything about jazz. Like I didn't, harmonically, everything. I was like completely unaware, but I started to get into it around like when I was 16 or something. I started to listen to like Monk records, and I was like, damn, this is the coolest music I have ever heard. I must understand this music.
Yeah.
And I started going to jazz clubs because like there was some all ages clubs at that time in the city that you could go to. And then when I was like probably about 17, so this is actually really awesome. My high school was in New York. It's like, there's not really arts high schools. There's one main arts high school, which is called LaGuardia, which is in Manhattan, and it's like all the arts. But in Brooklyn, there was no arts high school, but this one high school had like a good music program and a good theater program. And they'd basically taken all the money that would have gone to sports and they put it toward the arts. They just didn't have any sports, no sports. And so a huge high school, it's like 4,500 kids, and they were just like, no, we don't have sports, but we have arts. And so they had a music department that was, pretty good, I guess. And they had a MIDI program, which is amazing. They had a MIDI studio, a whole studio just for MIDI.
That's
and so when I was like a junior, they got a new MIDI teacher, this guy, Tom Torriello. And he came in and he was like, he was just a really cool guy. And I found out right away he was a jazz pianist, actually. And he played in Broadway, like in the pits and stuff, but he had been like a gigging jazz pianist. And I was like, I want to learn jazz piano. And it turned out he was my neighbor. He was my backyard neighbor, totally randomly. His backyard and my parents' backyard touched each other.
What?
Really totally random. And so I was like, oh, well, can I take lessons with you? He's like, yeah, come over, just hop the fence. $35, I'll give you a lesson. I was like, all right. So I would like go to his house, pay him $35, and we'd have these like 3-hour lessons where he'd just be teaching me, like we would go through everything. And he really completely changed the way that I thought about music, because he taught me jazz. Like he taught me how to, voice, like all about voicings and harmony. And the first thing he had me do was transcribe like a blues, just like it was cool. And so basically through him, I got into jazz, and then I started practicing like a lot. I was practicing like 4 or 5 hours a day, just trying to like understand how to play this music.
Yeah.
And because I graduated early, I had all this extra time on my hands. So I was just sitting at home practicing. And so by the time when I got to college, I was like, oh, I'm good. And then I was like, oh, I'm not good. Because I was like, my classmates were like Peter Evans and like, it was like super badasses. And I was like, oh, I'm not good at my instrument at all. What am I thinking?
Yeah.
So it's, anyway, went through a lot of ups and downs with that. But
well, before we hop to that, I'm just curious if you know the names of the clubs you were going to that was all ages, and what kind of people you were listening to at that time.
Sure. Yeah. Well, like Smalls was all ages.
Yeah.
And that was the main one. The way they had it set up was you paid, I forget how much it was. It wasn't very much. You paid and you could stay there all night. Like the music started at 8 and went till 8 in the morning. And you could just stay as long as you wanted. And they didn't serve alcohol, but they had these big containers of juice. So you could like bring vodka and like make your own drink with the juice that was there. And I remember seeing like Jason Lindner, a lot of people that I still like see around New York, or like I now know them because I live here. Like I see them at sessions and stuff.
Yeah.
But like, I remember him, and there was this drummer, I don't remember his name, but he made a big influence on me. He was an older guy, just super smartly dressed, with like a white suit, white hat. And he was swinging so hard, just like on brushes. And I remember being like, damn, this dude this is the cat.
Yeah.
But, just a lot of people like that were like, that was the thing. It's like in New York, everybody's there. Like at any minute you could walk into a club and be like, oh, it's Bill Frisell, or it's Joe Lovano, or what, whatever. They're all just like hanging around. So if you're into jazz, like you could just see all those guys.
Crazy.
That's cool. Is Small still all ages?
I think it is. He opened a second club. He opened that place. I think he opened the Fat Cat also, or they were somehow connected. And but I think maybe the Fat Cat closed. I don't know. But he's still there. I think he's still running Smalls. But it moved, and I don't know if it's all ages, but I think it might still be.
Man, yeah, that place has seen so much, and it's been an incubator for many different scenes. You know, and they're still streaming shows that I like to watch. Like anytime that Steve Nelson is playing there, what a magical man that human is. Cool, man, that's amazing. So like going to the like weird juice outs at Smalls till late in the morning when you're like 17.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because at the time, I mean, I think this is just true of anyone growing up anywhere. You don't really think of your experience as being exceptional. You're just like, oh, this is the experience that I'm having. But as I got older, I started to be like, oh, growing up in New York it's just its own thing. It doesn't exist this way anywhere else, really. Right. Like, not that there aren't other amazing places to grow up, but New York has that going for it, where you're just like, oh, you want to do music? Well, all the greatest musicians are here. Yeah. And you could just meet them and talk to them, you know.
And just be around them and hear that and have that energy around you.
Exactly.
Yeah. There's something about that. I mean, my mom would always bring me to see my drum teacher at like this grimy spot in Denver called El Chapultepec. But the room sounded, it worked. It sounded really good. And the way that drums sound in small rooms like that, and the way that really good sounding jazz feels in rooms like that is pretty amazing. And it's not something that you can just go to a jazz show and experience, I feel like. You know, there's something about that. It smells like smoke and piss, and you're eating this like weird smothered burrito, you know. But like the music is astonishing, you know. But anyway,
as opposed to arena jazz, right?
Say again.
As opposed to arena jazz.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right on. So, all right, cool. Did you go straight to Oberlin?
Yeah, so after I graduated high school, I did this internship, and I sort of I knew that I wanted to go to college, and but I was kind of like in this funny place of like I didn't think that I wanted to like do music. Like I was like, I always like to play music, but I didn't think I was going to be like a music major and like study music and stuff. And so Oberlin actually really appealed to me because it had this pretty good liberal arts college, and then it had the conservatory, so I knew there was a lot of music there if I wanted to do music. But I actually thought I was going to go and do something different, which I did. I actually have a history degree. Like I don't have a music degree.
Oh, I see.
I didn't study music. I just went there and I got a history degree, but right away I started to like take classes in the conservatory and do the jazz ensembles and stuff.
Okay, cool.
So I got there and I spent a year at Oberlin, and it was an amazing musical experience for me. But then I actually, after my first year, I thought, I was kind of like, you know what, I'm not sure if I want to continue in college. And certainly not, I was kind of like, do I want to, my parents are like paying for this college, and like, it just the whole thing felt weird to me actually. And so I just left.
Okay.
I went back home, and I just worked for a while and saved up a bunch of money, and I went to India. I just got on a plane and went. I told my parents, I was like 19. I was like, I'm going to India, and I'll see you later. And they were like, okay. So I just got a plane ticket, flew to India, got off the plane. Well, I went straight to Kerala, actually, like in South India.
Okay.
And I just started wandering around down there, and I met.
You didn't know anyone?
I knew no one. I had no plans. I just had like a book of like travel stuff, and I was like, oh, I'll just go there. And so I just started like kind of traveling around, and I met this Canadian guy who's the same age, and we just like hit it off immediately. He was a super sweet guy, and we started traveling. I was like, well, I'm just traveling. He's like, well, let's just travel together. I was like, great. So we went all over South India, and he was interested in music also. Like, and so we were going to a lot of concerts. Like that was the thing. We were like both checking out a lot of music, and there's so much music there, and there's tons of free festivals in Chennai. There's like a month-long festival of just like free concerts, probably 50 concerts a day, and you can just go to all of them. They're all free. What? It was and the best Indian musicians in South India are playing every day. So we were just like, okay. So we went there for like 4 days, just saw concert after concert, and
That's
then
cool.
we went up north and went to Benares or Varanasi, and I was just like walking down the street and I heard tabla, like, and I was like, oh, that's cool. I'm gonna go check it out. And it was just like this guy playing in his house, in his like little apartment. And I was like, hey, do you give lessons? He's like, sure. And so I just started studying with him. So I studied with him for like 2 months, just like in his house. And then
this doesn't sound real, man. That's
yeah.
like
My life,
just...
I don't know. Weird things. If you just like do weird things, then funny things happen. But yeah. So
I mean,
that is true. Truer thing have not been said.
that's awesome though, man. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, because I was like, so I started studying with this guy, and actually, I should sort of say, sort of part of this was like I felt like being at Oberlin, I felt like I just wasn't good enough to be there musically. I was like, there's so many amazing players here. Like I don't know anything. Like I felt kind of like out of my depths. And so when I was in India and I was studying with this guy, I still was not planning to go back. And then I had this dream, and actually this dream is crazy. I had this dream where I was, I walked onto a school bus, and on the school bus was a piano, and inside the piano, when you played it, you could bend notes and like play. It was like had all of this like sympathetic strings. It was like an Indian instrument, but it was a piano.
Uh-huh. Whoa.
And I was like, oh, and Peter Evans, who I knew from school, was there. And, of course, I looked up to him because he was such an incredible player, and we were like buddies. And in my dream, he was in the bus, and he was like, you can do anything you want to do. And I was like, whoa. So then when I woke up from my dream, I was like, I should go back to school and like study music. And so I went back. I finished my trip and went back home to New York.
What city was this person in? And do you remember his name?
The drummer?
Yeah.
I don't remember his name. This was like now more than 20 years ago, but it was in Varanasi.
Mm-hmm.
I could probably find his name if I have to like dig back into my emails. But yeah, he was cool because he was kind of like more of like a folk musician. He wasn't really like a classical, Indian musician. He was more into this, like, he played those kind of like grooves that were like, like dagene tena kadina da tena kadina dagene tena kadina da. It was like those kind of grooves, and he's always just grooving out, and like his vibe was more of that. Like I forget the name of those type of songs, but that was like what he was doing. And he played some classical music, but that wasn't like his thing.
Wow. Crazy.
Yeah. So then I came back, and I actually went to Berkeley for a summer with some friends, and I lived in Chateau, which is like one of the co-ops that's in Berkeley. And I studied with a guy named Brad Van Cleef, who was a tabla player in Berkeley, who actually studied he studied with Anindo Chatterjee, I think.
Wait, so how did you get to Berkeley? You just went randomly?
Yeah, like I had some friends. My friends from college were like, they were like, oh, what should we do? Well, like, we're looking for something to do, and Oberlin has like a big co-op system. Like I lived in the co-ops there, and they're connected to the Berkeley co-op system. Like there was some way that we were like, you can live in these co-ops if you live in the co-ops at Oberlin.
Oh, okay.
And so through that, we ended up like driving out there and spending the whole summer in Berkeley, which was my sort of like the first time I'd spent real time in California. And that's why I was studying tabla with this guy and practicing piano when I wasn't studying tabla. And then I went back to Oberlin, and at that point I kind of was like, I got super serious and like really dedicated to playing music. That was kind of that sort of led me down the path that I ended up on, I guess.
But you still got a history degree.
I still got a history degree because I didn't want, the head of the jazz department was like, you can join the jazz department, but you would have to do an extra year because you missed, like, you need to do all these requirements.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't want to spend 5 years in Ohio. Thank you.
Fair.
Yeah.
So, well, I'm just curious, what kind of history are you interested in, and what did you study?
I ended up kind of focusing on like post-colonial studies. So it was like Latin American history and Indian history mostly.
Mm.
But I mean, I'm interested in all types of history, and I still sometimes I'm like maybe I should get out of this music thing and just go get a history PhD and like become a professor. I'm like, I'm not going to do that, but sometimes I'd still think about it because I love that stuff.
Yeah.
And it was great, and there were some great professors there too. I learned a lot from them.
Wow, that's crazy that those types of thoughts still run through your mind after like you've had all the everywhere that you've gone and ending up at Figure 8 and everything. But however, when you were at Oberlin, would you cross paths with like Anne Rainwater? Was that at the same time, or how about this? Was Mike Schultz teaching audio there at that point?
I don't think so. I don't. Right. If so, I didn't meet him.
Okay.
I was there with Peter Evans obviously, but also like Matt Nelson, the tenor player.
Yep.
He was there, and I mean a lot of great musicians. I'm trying to think who else is sort of like around now. Actually, yeah, this woman, Aurora Nealand. I don't know if you're familiar with her. She's a great saxophone player that lives in New Orleans.
Not personally, but
yeah, just like just a lot of great players. But I was kind of like, it's funny because in retrospect, I look back at that time and think like, I was very focused on like jazz and sort of like improvising in that context, but there was a lot of really cool electronic music happening that I was completely oblivious to, which now I'm sort of like interested in. At the time I was like, those guys are a bunch of losers. Like they're just making bleeps and bloops on some synthesizers. This is a bunch of jive turkeys over here, which is hilarious. But that was kind of, you live and learn, I guess.
Yeah, it's so easy in that environment to have polarized views on things that will end up being great loves for you later on. I've experienced that many, many different ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. That's interesting. So I'm curious though, that when you were improvising, and I assume you were writing at this point as well, would you say that you were on like a straight ahead track, or were you already starting to move into like sort of, free improvisation along with composition? And I'm sure you're checking out a fair amount of stuff, but what were your studies like in terms of improvisation at that time?
I was really focused on, and to some extent I still am, although I don't do anything about it. I'm like really interested in like being a master of like straight ahead jazz playing. Like, even though I never play straight ahead jazz almost at all anymore, I'm like really into it in a certain way. And I really had this desire to feel like I could be in control of that music. Like I could walk into a situation and be like, really play like the most just beautiful, harmonically deep kind of thing. So at that point, I really was just like checking out a ton of that kind of music. And and a lot of what I did at Oberlin, like multiple hours every day, was just go to the library and listen to music. Like I probably listened to, thousands of records.
Yeah.
At the library, because that was just like, we had an amazing library, and I was like, I wonder what like late 60s, like whatever, Cannonball Adderley or, whatever, like you could just go there and be like, what do they have, and just listen to it. So that was my main focus. But I was interested in more like, I listened to I got into Ornette, and I was into like more free stuff, but I just wanted to I spent a lot of my time just really trying to play changes, basically.
Yeah. And I'm sure the language itself, like the vernacular,
just transcribing it. But also, so this is kind of a funny side thing that took me into some weird things. But in my second year there, I think, or my third year, I can't remember. I ended up joining a jug band. Like there was a jug band. So this is really weird. There was this jug band that existed, and they actually sought me out for some reason. They were like, "We want you to play washboard in this jug band." And I was like, "I don't know anything about this music, and I don't play the washboard." And they're like, "You're going to play washboard in this band." And I was like, and my friend Harry, who was there also, they were like, "You're going to play slide guitar." They basically drafted us into their band, and we were like, "This is weird," but the band was amazing. It's actually everyone in the band was an incredible musician, and they were just really into this old time music. And so I learned a lot about old time music and blues and pre-blues and like everything. And we also did a lot of music that wasn't just jug band music. So it was basically like a musical education that was happening like as a subset of my musical education at Oberlin, was like learning this other totally different thing. And we practiced, we played a lot, we played gigs all the time. We became like weirdly famous at Oberlin, and it's like it was a really weird sub side of things. And then actually that's how I ended up moving to California, was because the band at the end of college, everyone was like, well, we got to keep this band together, and we ended up deciding to move to Oakland. And we were out there for like a year just playing gigs like all the time, just hustling. And then the band kind of broke up because the personalities it wasn't good vibes. Yeah. But anyway, so that's a weird sort of other angle that my life kind of, I took a side little journey in that
side
world.
Quest. Dude,
Yeah.
I mean, most folks would access that via, I don't know. I mean, that you're going even way back before like trad jazz or anyone, or like gypsy jazz, anything like that. You just got into like Delta, like Skip James kind of.
Yeah, and earlier, like back in like the 1800s, we were like going way back because we were trying to find the pre-blues music. Because and the jug band music is really from the 20s. It sort of predates the sort of Delta blues, or it's kind of comparable. It's like a similar time frame, but it deals with more like popular song. And these kind of like it's its own like weird subgenre, but there's some of these bands from that time are amazing, like amazing bands.
Is this stuff that you still listen to?
Occasionally, I'll check it out and be like, "Damn, this shit is still happening." Like I still go back to it, and I still like it. And I learned so much. One of the guys in the band is basically like a music historian of that music.
Okay,
and he runs like the Brooklyn Folk Festival every year here. He's like he's like a deep Brooklyn folk person. And so he showed me so many records, just an unreal stuff. Like it got me into a lot of music from like the Bahamas and sort of these island music. And also like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Secret Museum of Mankind.
No.
No.
They're like these collections made by this guy, Pat Conte, who like lives in his mother's basement in Queens. And he's like a crazy record collector. Like he has just, insane records from all over the world. And he started putting them together as these compilations that sort of are themed, but I think there's like at least 20 of them now. And they are like some of the most incredible music. Just like, you can't believe some of the things that are on there. You're like, this is the most magical thing I've ever heard. So I definitely recommend checking that out.
Yeah, let me pop that down. The Secret
Museum of Mankind.
All right.
What's the guy's name?
I think his name is Pat Conte, like Conte.
Okay. Pat.
Huh. Interesting. There's like a thing on. So this is okay. We can research this later, perhaps.
Yeah, I feel like you guys are going to be enjoy that. There's a lot of sweet treats in there.
Yeah, maybe we'll do a follow-up episode about our discoveries about that. That sounds amazing. Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you.
Sure.
All right, cool. So you ended up. What year was it that you landed in Oakland?
2004.
Oh, okay, cool. And you didn't attend Mills, did you?
No. I didn't even know what Mills was. I had no idea that it was even there until I met like Jacob Zimmerman.
Yeah.
he was the first person I knew who, I mean, I knew like Sam Aspavad and Jordan and those guys, but like somehow I didn't like know about, like Mills didn't like, I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
Interesting.
You know? Yeah.
Yeah. So Jacob was the first one that you met from Mills that maybe you were making music with, or?
Well, we started doing rehearsals at Mills for his ensemble, that Lawson ensemble, which was, you know, really awesome. It was like his thesis music, I guess.
Yeah.
And so we used to go up there, and I was like, oh, this place, I didn't even know, I didn't know what it was. Like, I kind of just didn't know anything about it. And then going there, I was like, oh, this is like this place that, it gave me like a kind of idea of what it was. And
yeah,
you know, just then meeting a bunch of people who were involved, sort of obviously people who were attending Mills, but then I started to realize all the people that had gone to Mills that I knew also, just like so many people had gone through there in one way or another.
And those and the teachers.
Totally. And the teachers. Exactly.
You know,
yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Like when you landed in the Bay, are you, after college, are you starting to play in like a lot of other people's bands and like playing out and stuff?
Well, when I got there, so I was really doing this jug band thing, and we were really deep in that for a while. Like we were rehearsing all the time, and you know, it was whatever. And we played a lot of shows, and so that was kind of like my main thing. But I was also working on my like jazz career, because my whole concept at that point was like, I'm going to stay here for a few years, kind of keep practicing, and then I'm going to move back to New York and like trying to hit the big time. Yeah. And so what I was doing was just any jazz gig that I could find, which ended up being, I just accompanied singers. That was like my main gig, like jazz cabaret singers and stuff. And I did that for quite a while.
And that's fantastic practice, just like harmonically and thinking about changes on the moment and
learning tunes. That was kind of like what I was interested in. And so I did that, and I did a lot of solo piano gigs, these horrible 5-hour solo piano gigs that were soul sucking.
5 hours?
What?
Yeah, real brutal.
like
marathons in hotel lobbies.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That makes more sense. Like,
not like performances. I wish they were performances. In my mind, they were a performance, but mostly they were just horrifying. So I was just doing that. I was like really doing like the hustle. Like I was like, I'm just taking gigs, any gig, whatever. I don't care. I was playing blues gigs, like whatever gig I could. So in that way, I was kind of just getting an education as far as like what it meant to be a professional musician, and just have to take any gig and just learn the music, and, you know, try to get into the kind of whatever genre like I was supposed to be playing. I was like, okay, I'm playing in a soul band, like, you know, which in retrospect, like, I don't even believe in genres anymore, but like, I feel like at that point I was like, I have to learn how to play like this. I have to learn to play these piano parts, like this Chicago blues style. And, you know, so I got really deep into just really shedding these kind of almost, genre specific styles.
I feel like I feel like there's a lot of value to that personally. Totally. You know what I mean? Cause like, you know, I teach right now at Oakland School for the Arts, and the kids always are on their own trip. Like, you know, they'll just throw, like the other day I had to basically learn actual proof on the spot. And it's like, that's a very difficult too. You know what I mean? Like, and then, so later on I was listening to that and I was like, how exactly does Herbie like get that like punchy thing happening in the beginning, right. You know, but also that all, you know, being more studio musician, thinking about like how to get the piano to feel a certain way, like on like a soul pop tune or something like that. You know, you do end up picking up a lot of stuff, and then it does just all end up feeling like music. But I feel like it's really valuable to try to.
You have to learn the rules before you break them.
That's right.
That's what they say. Yeah.
I have to slowly crawl before I can sprint.
Stand up. Yeah.
Slither on my tummy. At what point did you start assembling groups of your own? Because it seems like after around, I don't know, 2008, maybe 2010, there was just like shablam. Like you just had this massive explosion of projects and recording and you know, working with all this close, tight network of people, but just like a lot of different contexts, you know, it's really fascinating.
Well, I think, you know, for me, like I was saying, it was like I was so focused on just learning and becoming like what I wanted to like master these things. Like I really wasn't ever satisfied with anything I was doing, and I felt kind of like I basically had like imposter syndrome to the extent where I was just like, I'm never going to be a good enough jazz pianist. Like I'll never sound like Bill Evans did in 1961 or whatever. And it's like, and I just started to, which is fine. I mean, who does? Nobody. That's the whole thing. But at the time I just felt so down on myself. And I think I didn't, I think, so basically all that being what sort of because of that, or sort of within that, I started this trio with Nate Brenner, who I think you guys both know. I don't know if Bob, do you know Nate, the bass player?
I don't think so.
You all have been in the same room multiple times.
Definitely, yeah. I'm sure you've been around it. But he moved out there about a year after me, and I went to Oberlin with him, so I knew him from there. And this drummer named Rob Schwartz, who also moved out there, and the three of us just practiced every day. We were just like a jazz trio, and we just practiced. We like made arrangements. We like played tunes. We worked on like playing in odd meters. We just did everything every day. They lived together. And so I would go to their house, and then eventually we all moved to the same block, and we lived across the street from each other. And so we would just like go over there and just play every day. And we'd play gigs. We had a weekly jam at the Uptown that we ran.
Yeah.
For like 2 years, every Tuesday night. So we were just like playing. And for that, I started writing more for that trio. And that was sort of the beginning of when I started to, and that was Beep. That was the beginning of the Beep trio before Sam joined. So we have a record that's that trio. That's the three of us. That's kind of more of like a straight ahead record in some ways. It's probably my favorite, like some of my favorite straight ahead ish playing that I ever made of myself. And I like the way it sounds. But
there's
that would be the Short Stories record.
Exactly. Yeah.
I have some Beep lined up, but it's crab cakes. I think that's
crab cakes. It's a different vibe. Yeah,
different vibe. Down the road a bit.
So that, like, I think basically, that trio starting to write for that band, and then I had a Duke Ellington band that I actually got through like Marcus Shelby. I was able to get the original scores for like a lot of Duke Ellington music through the Library of Congress that he had.
Whoa.
He shared them. He just gave them to me. And so I just had these scores. So I used the scores to make reductions for like a sextet. And we played a lot of like really beautiful Duke tunes in that band. And then I also wrote for that band, like sort of in the style of Duke Ellington. I mean, not really, but like with that in mind, sort of influenced by that music.
How illuminating was it to work from the original scores and make reductions? That sounds incredible.
I mean, it was very cool. I, again, like wish that my reading was better because I feel like I really had to pick through it to like really understand what was happening. But looking at like the sax sections, I was like, this is insane. Some of these, like the writing is so beautiful, just like really weird, not what you'd expect kind of stuff. My favorite Duke Ellington stuff is probably that like Blanton Webster band, like the 1940 to 42 kind of era. And that was the stuff I was most interested in. So I looked at all those charts.
Yeah.
Like rain check and like, I don't know, it's a lot of kind of, it's really cool music, but
interesting.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's when I started writing for bands. And simultaneously kind of going back, I played in a rock band that whole time called The Attachments. That was like this kind of goofy, really silly rock band. And I started writing songs for that band. And that kind of reminded me that I liked writing pop songs, which I had been doing when I was 8.
Yeah.
But now I was 25 and I was like, you know what? I like writing pop songs. And I remember that was almost in a way like what I had originally been up to. So it kind of took me back, and since and actually since then I've just been getting more and more into that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, when I'd like to go through some of these projects and listen, but it's really interesting to go through the catalog a bit and then check out, things sort of settling in rocket ship land. But. So, can we check out some of the stuff that was starting to happen around that time? Like,
sure.
like maybe like arts and sciences? Like when did that group come together?
Yeah, so that was like, trying to think how that, that was exactly around that period when I was like, Beep had been happening. So this was probably like around 2008, 2009. And I started to I was like, I want to write more music and I want to explore more like free improvisation and just different like sonic textures than like the piano trio. And I was starting to get more into like playing keyboards. And I'd met Jordan, and I met him because he was subbing for Sam on a bunch of Beep gigs. Weirdly, that's how I first met Jordan. And I was like, this guy's a real weirdo. I love him. Like right away, I was like, this is the guy.
Yeah.
And so I sort of asked him, and Matt Nelson was still living in the Bay, and we knew each other for a long time, and I'd been playing with Jacob. So I was like, these are great. These are all three great musicians who all are also kind of compose and improvise a lot in a more free context. So I just kind of put that band together, being like, this will be a fun band, and everybody brought music.
I love that.
Yeah, that's cool.
It was really nice.
I feel like when I moved to the Bay, I was very much introduced to being in groups where you are expected to be a contributor of compositions, and you're hanging out with a bunch of really great players and writers, and everyone has their own voice. That happened out here way more than I've experienced that before. But so the particular tune that I have kind of queued up is called "Those Lepers." Did you? I just kind of I liked the sound and thought it was an interesting representation from that record. Was that your composition, or do you know? It was.
Yeah. So for that record, I think all the songs are mine except for one by Jacob.
Oh, that's right. It actually it says that. This is okay.
I think that's. But that was kind of If you want to check it out, I'm
let's
happy
listen
to hear that one.
Let's listen to a little bit. Something in that that I hear, and I mean, I know you've been writing since you for a long time and in different styles, but as I listen across, there's just your ability to explore one idea and work with that and move, like have one section, one idea, and be very focused on it, is admirable to me. And that's something that, I really enjoy hearing that. And I feel like even in some of the rocket ship stuff that you just like name the compositions, what the idea is. You know what I mean? But it's interesting hearing that in that context. Like the second part of that, you're just like, okay, I'm gonna move these intervals around, and we're gonna work with this as a band. How much instruction was there for them, or was it just like a few blocks of chords, and you're like, all right, we're gonna work with this and get back to the beginning, or
I don't know. I think all that was like entirely, well, let me say a couple things. First of all, I appreciate you saying that, and I feel personally like one thing that I'm always striving for is that ability to go deeper on one idea, because I find myself being like, oh, I have a million stupid little ideas. I'll just follow this one and this one. And I really, as a composer and as an improviser, I'm always like, I love people who can just like zone in on something and be like, I'm going to develop this idea actually. So that's nice for you to say that. I don't feel that way about myself when I don't think of myself that way, but that's interesting to hear.
Well, I'm not saying you're any Bill Evans from 1961.
Say no more. Say no more.
Just kidding.
But I think I also, two things about that. One thing is this music was really, really influenced by that band, The Curtains. Like, I don't know if I sent you a couple things about them, but that's my friend who later became a friend of mine, Chris Cohen. That was like his early band. And when I heard those records, it just knocked me out. I just couldn't get enough of them. I listened to them endlessly over and over on repeat, and I couldn't understand how they made that music. I still don't really understand it. It's like very mysterious music to me. And I think when I was making a lot of the music for arts and sciences at this point, I was really trying to sort of channeling those songs, which are they're basically like through composed free jazz.
Okay.
They're like, and that was sort of how I was thinking about this stuff. Everything is written with the arts and sciences. I mean, obviously there's solos, but like for like that piece, I think the whole thing was notated, and then I just let the whole band just kind of expand on some of the notation, and then just like suck it back in to get the ending of the song.
Wow.
You know
okay. So
like it is pretty composed.
So yeah, you did send The Curtains, but my experience with Chris Cohen, I listened to the stuff that I had never heard of at all, or had never experienced. But I think I'm much more familiar with later Chris Cohen, and
totally
not quite like that at all. It's like really good sounding songs,
yeah,
amazing song records too.
Totally,
I love those ones that have been out in the past, like 5 or 7 years or something like that. Was he at a time, and maybe at this time, involved with Deerhoof at all? I don't.
Yeah, so he was in the Bay Area from like starting around like 98 or something, and he joined Deerhoof in like 2000. And I think he played with Deerhoof for like 4 or 5 years. But in that time, he also had this band, The Curtains, and Greg Saunier played synth in Curtains.
Oh,
he's the synth player.
Crazy.
Yeah. Huh. And so that record, I think the one I sent you, Flybys, is like Greg is playing keyboard.
Yeah, I'll definitely go back.
Check it out. It's pretty wild. It's pretty unique music, I think.
Awesome.
Yeah. So yeah,
So at this time with with arts and sciences, are you already working with recording with Eli Cruz? Are you involved with New and Improved at this point already?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I met Eli on the second Veep record. Sam Aspavat was the one who was like, I think we should record this with Eli at New Improved. And I was like, okay, I didn't know him. And we went in, and right away I was like, I love this guy. He's amazing. And his whole vibe and his whole just like intensity, I really dug it. And then I just, from then on, I just was like, Eli's my guy. I just do everything with Eli. Yeah. Except for, I'd already, Mark Allen Piccolo.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah. So Mark and I had played in this band for a long time, this rock band. And so, and he is also a recording engineer, but didn't have a studio. So we did a lot of stuff at different houses for that rock band. And he was the one who kind of taught me a lot about like home recording and just recording in general. I learned from both like Mark and Eli were my two like big mentors, I would say, as far as like learning everything at that period.
Yeah. So wasn't it? Well, no, maybe not. Sorry, I'm trying to think of what was the record that you worked on. I had it in my head here. Oh, it was Young Nudist. That's one that you did a lot of the recording stuff yourself, right? And that you were borrowing Mark's stuff. It says on your on the discography.
Yeah, we shared a practice space, and I was like, Mark, can I just use all your gear? And he was like, go ahead, do whatever you want. So like periodically, I'd be like, how do I use this compressor? And he's like, this is how you use it. Like I'd call him at work, and he'd be like, yeah, this is how you do the. So I like just basically was like picking his brain on like using his gear.
Awesome. Yeah, so that must have been before like Sharkbite, or I feel like he was doing.
Yeah, Sharkbite was there. Yeah, he worked a little bit at Sharkbite, but he, mostly he worked. He was like did a lot of remote recording. He just recorded people in whatever space they were in. He had like a portable setup that was really nice.
Sorry, what is Sharkbite?
Sharkbite's like a recording studio in Jack London Square. Do you know that rehearsal space down there? That's like Jordan and Robert Lopez had a space down there. In that same building is this studio called Sharkbite.
Okay, I've never seen that studio.
It's like a lot of metal bands, weirdly. Like that, which is weird because when you see the studio, it really doesn't look like a studio that metal bands would want to record at. But that for some reason, that's like a lot was happening there.
Yeah. And then I've only worked there with Mark, so it's been, a myriad of projects like Melody Parker's music and things of that nature.
That's right.
Cool. Well, man, there's a lot that there's. At this time, you were also working with Tune Yards, which led to Cavity Fang. Can you tell that story just briefly? Because all that is cool.
Yeah, it was a pretty funny. It was like basically Meryl from Tune Yards was like had this idea that she wanted to have drums, like real drums in her band, like a drummer, but she didn't want to have just like a drummer. So her concept, I guess, was to have almost like a drum section. And so she asked Nate, her connection to Oakland at that point, especially was like really through Nate, because Nate had been living there for, 5 or 6 years. And she had just basically, I think she was just moved to Oakland at that point, or hadn't even, I'm not even sure. But so she was like, who should we use? And he was like, oh, of course, you got to use Sam Aspavat, Jordan Glenn, and Hamir Atwal. So like that, so that's like became the drum section, like, and we did just a few rehearsals and we only played 2 gigs, but they were super fun. It was like,
it sounds incredible, dude.
The band was amazing. It was like, I forget who was playing what, but everybody sounded great. And they learned all of her drum parts and learned them in this formation. Cause her parts are actually like pretty crazy. And they had to like kind of learn, it was like even harder to just learn one bit of it without actually like playing the whole part, because it's like so much of it is like how like playing the drums, there's so much of like the hands and the feet are like relating to each other. But if you're just playing one part, it's like it feels really awkward actually. If you're like doing just like the upbeat like 16th notes of the hi-hat or something, it's like very weird to do that if that's all you're doing. And I think like that was kind of how it broke down like that for them. And so we did a couple shows and it was super fun, and I loved just hearing the 3 of them play together. And it just kind of gave me this idea of like, it'd be fun to write music for that, with those 3 guys in mind, like trying to figure out how to make that work as a thing.
Yeah.
And then, so I just kind of like holed up in my space and wrote like this bunch, just wrote all the music basically in one. I just wrote it straight through, kind of basically in the order that we play it. Yeah, it was like very inspired. Like sometimes, when you're just like music just is like, it's just there. You're like, here's the music. I don't have to really do anything.
Yes, totally.
Those are fun and lovely moments when they happen.
So rare, but so delightful. Yeah.
Yeah. Usually it's a ton of work.
A lot of work. Yeah.
A lot of voice notes. That's so cool. And you rounded it out with Corey Wright and Ava Mendoza.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that was really, I just lucked out that everybody was able to do it.
Yeah, what a cool band.
Yeah, it was so fun. And then we had like then we had a few, like John Arkin did it a couple times, and And I did it in New York with Jordan like a couple years ago, and Jason Hoops played bass also with the band. So we added like electric bass, which was cool. Yeah.
Awesome. Were they in town with Fred at the time? And
no, I don't know why they were both there actually. That's a really good question. Jason, I don't know.
Right on.
Yeah.
I think this was
what they were doing. This
band was the first context I saw you perform in. I'm pretty sure.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was connected to this band through Jordan. Like that's turned me on to it. Yeah. But yeah.
Do you remember where the show was? Because we only played a handful of shows, really.
If I'm not mistaken, it was at this like very strange art space in East Oakland.
Oh, in East Oakland? I wonder where it was. Not the place down, like, not the gallery that was done by Jack London Square.
Well, okay. I mean, I guess it depends, but it was like south of Jack London.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. I think we only played like 5 shows or something, which is, it was just impossible to organize everybody. And like,
yeah. I hear that, man.
Yeah.
Well, let's listen to a pinch. This is a Average Shopper.
So, how much of that was like influenced by tabla brain, South Indian music brain?
I don't know. For me, like, it's hard sometimes to know what, like, I mean, I'm sure both you guys know this, like, you write music or you're hearing music and then like only like 10 years later, or you're like, oh yeah, that's what was going on. Like, it's hard, you're in, for me, sometimes I'm just too inside of something to even hear what's happening. When I hear that music now, I'm like, oh, I remember what I was really just, and still, I was just really interested in this idea of like, polyrhythms and rhythms working against each other and maybe never even resolving, just things that are just really like kind of, dissonant in a way, both harmonically and rhythmically. Like I remember Kim Cass. I mean, you guys, both know Kim?
Yeah.
So you don't know him. He's
a fantastic bassist and also one of the most highly skilled polyrhythmic human beings I've ever met.
Yeah, he's like almost like an alien level polyrhythm master. But I remember he came to at one of these gigs, and he was like, "This music doesn't make any sense." Like he couldn't make sense of it, and I was
the loops weren't resolved.
Yeah, it was like it just like wasn't like locked up, and I was like, "Yeah, you're right." Like I was like, "It doesn't really make any sense."
Your songs are broken.
Yeah, he's like, "You got to get your shit together."
Get your Macadini books out.
Yeah, damn it. But anyway, so yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm sure there's some of that. I've always been interested. I've always just been interested. For me, I think rhythm has always been like the thing that has carried me through music. Like I never felt like I had a great ear. I didn't really have a great sense of harmony. I never felt like, but I was like, rhythm is something that just like felt natural to me.
Interesting.
When is there anything that you can point to that is like definitely inspired by your work with tabla?
Not, I would say not really, because like I think in a way I always kept that so separate. Weirdly, I always just kept it like compartmentalized in this like place of like I'm working. I felt really, and partially I felt a certain type of respect to that tradition that I didn't want to kind of be like, oh yeah, I dabble in this music. Like I felt like I was like, I'm either going to do this music like as legit as I can do it.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to like do some sort of like, like whatever, world beat type thing. Nothing against that, but like, I just felt like I really felt weird about it personally.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if there's actually anything other than some of those rhythms that just like the kind of T highs that come back in that music. That's like those,
Yeah, the T highs.
I feel like that's part of, I use that a lot in like playing piano stuff where I'll like repeat these rhythms that are floating over the bar line until they land. And that's like the T high sort of concept.
Are T highs always in threes, or does it?
I think they're always in threes, I think, but I'm not totally sure.
I did Kathak dance, which is Northern Indian classical dance in college as an elective, and it was awesome. And that's cool. That's where I learned about T high. And then when you hear it, it's there. So yeah, you described that, but can you say the definition of that one more time for
the T high? You mean?
Yeah, T high, please.
I mean, my understanding of it is just that it's like a rhythmic figure that you start it in a specific place so that when you repeat it 3 times, the final beat of it lands on the downbeat of the next cycle.
Yeah, the larger phrase.
Exactly.
There's kind of a lot of ways you can do it, I think, like because the T highs can be long, and then you can shorten them as you get closer to resolving.
Right.
And it's all this math of working backwards from the downbeat, basically.
Exactly. Yeah.
What? You can change the length of the mini phrases?
Well, so like if you have something that's like, I'm going to mess up this math right now if I try to do it in front of you, but like you have something that's like 7 beats long, and then like say you're repeating that 3 times, and then on the 3rd time you just chop the last 3 beats, and you do the last 3 beats like 3 times, and then maybe just the last 1 beat 3 times, and then the last beat is then 1. So it's like this kind of compacting of the end of the idea so that the resolution, it's just like driving the resolution down harder and harder and harder towards 1.
Interesting. Right. Yeah, more rhythmic tension in a way.
You just have to know where that starts, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because sometimes they start super far ahead, like ridiculously long. You're like, oh, there's no way this is going to make it. And then it totally does. That's crazy.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So here's something that I'm excited to talk to you about. And it must have been around the same time, within a year or so, that you started playing with Casey Knudsen and John Arkin, Shimsheimer Family Trio, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is, to me, this is a different sound from a lot of the other projects that you have from this time, even in how the recording sounds. But Casey is one of my favorite all-time improvisers ever, and I feel lucky and honored to have met her and be able to play with her. It's totally. And like this trio with you, Casey and John is just, it's amazing. So can you tell us a bit about how this started and all that?
Yeah. So I think, so I met Casey pretty early on when I first moved to the Bay. I remember seeing her at Jupiter playing like a jazz gig, and I was like, she's pretty good. Like we were like 25 years old or something. Yeah. And then we kind of met, and we just became friends. Like I think we have we just kind of had a simpatico kind of relationship. And I met John kind of early on also, and played a bunch of I used to do a lot of these like background jazz gigs, and he was a lot often on those type of gigs. He's just been around the Bay for a long time, and he's the kind of person that at first you meet him and you're like, he's really unassuming, and you're just like, oh, he's just a guy who plays jazz. And then you're like, there's something else going on here. He has like a lot of other interests. It became clear to me that he was like a genius at some point. I was like, oh, he's actually kind of a genius. Like there you have it. Very low key genius. So, and the two of them had been playing as a trio with various bass players for years. They had this band called the We Three Trio. And it was like Nate had done it, Miles Wick, like a bunch of different bass players.
Oh, Miles. And
eventually they had a gig. I think they had a gig at De Young for something. And they couldn't find a bass player. And they were like, hey, do you want to play? And we can do a trio, like the three of us, no bass player. And I was like, yeah, sure. And they had all this really ridiculously difficult music. And I was like, all right, time to learn this impossible music. And so we like learned the music, and I brought a few things. And we were like, hey, this is fun. Like maybe we should do this. And we sort of just started playing regularly and bringing in tunes, kind of just like a workshop band.
Yeah.
And then eventually we were like, this is really like, this music is going somewhere. It's like really strange, and maybe we should record it. So that's what the first record was, kind of that. And I think like that was around the time that we came up with the name, which was that we were like, I was like, oh, we should be we all kind of like look the same. That was like the joke. So we're like, let's like just have a fake family band. And so we were like, so John came back like the next rehearsal and was like, I got the name Shimsheimer Family Trio. And it's like from a Kurt Vonnegut book. And so we just were like, yeah. And then when we go on tour, we just tell people that we're a family. And it's like, most people just think that. And it's amazing. They come up to us and they're like, wow, so did you guys play music as kids? And we're like, yes, we did. We're like completely go with it. It's amazing. It's so fun.
No way. Dude, yeah. I asked Casey about that one time, and she held it tight. She's like, I'm going to keep that one to myself. About the name of the band.
Yeah,
she held
that's
it
so
tight.
Funny.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yes. So the Family Fun Time was the first record that came out, and that was in 2013. Mm-hmm. And again, at New and Proof, but this was recorded by Mark Ellington.
Yeah.
I was going to play a little bit of Hedgehog from this one. And the reason, I mean, I love these records, but I really like, I don't know who wrote this or anything, which is also cool, but I like just this, you get to hear you on, is that the grand that's in there?
It's the old piano that was there, which was this really rinky-dink piano that they got rid of, and now they have that Steinway in there. I recorded with you with Aaron on the old piano.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, because this the sound of it sounds really good, and it's nice to hear you playing piano in this context. 'Cause I feel like I don't hear that often.
Yeah.
On records. But anyway, let me throw on some of this here. Beautiful playing. That's excellent.
Thanks.
So good. Well, stand by.
I agree with Mark in that like you've definitely made a name for yourself as like keyboard man, and it is kind of like refreshing to check out these recordings where you're just playing like regular piano. Like it's cool because you do it like you have such fluidity with it, you know.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because I spent so many years and hours playing piano, and I think part of the reason that I don't do it anymore is because I'm just kind of like, I just got to a point where I was like, I don't. It's not like it's not as like fun for me as like just playing keyboards, like, which is kind of silly, but like I still love playing piano, but when I think that. Yeah, it just got to a point almost where I was like, I felt like I wasn't like exciting myself anymore. I wasn't finding new things for myself to play. And that was why like I've always just keep seeking out new instruments, like new weird keyboards that are like, oh, this is a cool sound. And I don't know. I do love piano and I still practice piano, but I just feel like, yeah, it's funny. Like I hear myself on the piano. I'm like, oh, that's kind of nice. I should try to play some piano sometime. I don't know.
It's great. I mean, that song didn't prominently feature Casey, but I just felt like that was a really nice moment. The interplay between you and John, and you get to hear a little bit of, you know, compositionally, you can hear there's a harmonic framework. There's something happening there, but there's like such a sense of freedom in everyone's playing too within what I imagine is a complex framework. You know, like those tunes are kind of bonkers. Kind of.
It's funny because that one actually was one that I wrote that one, and it was like I made it. The premise of that song was that there's two melody parts, and one melody is like a 16th note subdivision, the other's a triplet subdivision, and they just play against each other. And it's like, so we tried to keep that in the improvising. In the family. We kept it in the family. So that's, and actually like in later versions of that song, and we started playing that live, the head in is a 16th note subdivision, and John plays 16 notes basically like as his subdivision. And then on the head out, we just play in 3. Like we just switched to the quarter note triplet, the half note triplet. We just switched to the half note triplet. And that becomes the bass line for the whole song. And then Casey's part starts, or whoever's playing the triplet part just starts to feel like it's like the main time. It's really weird.
But the 16th notes stay steady?
They keep going, but then they become like rubbing against this triplet as opposed to the other way around.
Cool.
Yeah, so it was just like almost like an exercise, but it became a really fun song to play.
Yeah, John is so fast at reacting.
He really is.
He has such a good ear.
He's often like ahead of everyone else, actually. That's what I've started to realize. Like he'll be playing the thing that I'm about to play. I'm like, oh, like he's doing that thing. Like I played a bunch of gigs actually with him and Kim Cass, like trio jazz playing standards, and I just got so lost. I was like, these dudes are playing the craziest stuff. Like Kim would start playing some crazy polyrhythm, and then John was like right there with him. And I was like, I think they're playing in 7 now. Yeah. It would just get so crazy. It was fun.
Wow.
I'm glad that happens to other people. That I feel like that happens to me in and out. You know what I mean? Like I'm just like, man, I just got my ass handed to me again.
Yeah, that happens constantly. Yeah.
Jeez, Louise. I thought I knew how to play a little bit of jazz, but maybe not.
I just did a recording session actually. Super fun it was Kenny Wollaston's band. It was Kenny, Tony Scher, and Nashit Waits was playing drums.
Oh my God.
And it was crazy. I was very much like, okay, I have to like keep it together. These guys are all like, I know Kenny's a friend of mine. We've done a lot of stuff together, but like I'd never met Nashit before, and Tony is great. And the bass player is this guy, Chris Thomas, who plays in Brian Blade Fellowship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I was just kind of like, okay, now I have to I have to be cool. And it was so funny because there was probably within the first 3 minutes of the first song, Nashit started to play something and the whole band just fell apart. Like nobody knew what was going on.
I've heard that my friend Colin is a good friend of his, and he said he kind of laughs about him because he's always like, man, Nashit just will go and take the idea and what he's doing and push it as far as it needs to in terms of energy.
Yeah.
He's not so worried about tempo, pushing and pulling, and he just sounds like the earth coming up from underneath you when you listen to him. I listen to records with Nashit on there all the time. And if I got that call that you got, I'm not exactly sure how I would prepare for that, but it would be really intense.
It was intense. I mean, luckily it's Kenny's music, and he hired me because he wanted me to like go to freak out basically. And I was like, I just played a bunch of like instruments. I played like a Buchla synth and like this crazy wooden synth that's just like it's like a texture thing. And I was just like going crazy. And they kept looking at me like, does this guy, who is this guy? Like, because I was just over there being like, like bleeping around. And but I think they were into it. But it was funny because I was like, I felt very free in my role because I know Kenny wanted it that way. But it was also like, I felt a little bit like, it was funny because I was like, man, these guys all are just so killing, and I'm just over here blooping around. But, but it was really pretty fun.
There you go, hating on electronic music.
I know, just blooping and bleeping, blopping, plugging stuff together. I don't know what's going on.
I don't know.
So when is that coming out, or what's?
I don't know. Kenny it was cool. It was like I was supposed to play a gig actually at the Stone with Kenny and Nashit and this guy Dalius, who they're Kenny and Dalius are really tight, but the shows got canceled because of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So Kenny was like, well, instead of playing a show, let's just go into the studio. And so he just booked a couple studio days, and Kenny is an interesting guy because he's been around for years, played on a million records, but like doesn't really have his own records. So I think he's starting to make more of his own records. So that's hopefully what this will be.
Yeah, he has like this weird label world.
Yeah,
like his label Bandcamp is really fascinating.
It's insane. I know. I'm deeply involved in all of that stuff, so I know it pretty well.
Okay, cool.
But that's like the first time he's ever put out. Just in the last couple of years, it's the first time he's ever really put out music of his own.
Oh, okay, wow.
Yeah.
And did you? Since we're talking about it, I did want to talk a little bit about that. Did you become more involved with him just from your work at Figure Eight?
Yeah, like actually, I think I met him. I was subbing as an engineer on a session that was a crazy session. I was pretty nervous. It was him, Bill Frisell, Ethan Iverson, and Hank Roberts.
What?
All, and I was like, okay, like I'm the engineer, like let me not mess this one up. And so, we recorded, and I felt pretty good about it. And Kenny he's kind of interesting guy because he's really friendly and loving, but he's also weirdly standoffish in a way. So I was like, oh, is he not down? And then I met him like a week later because Ben Goldberg had brought him in for a session at Figure Eight that I was engineering.
Right.
So I met him again, and he was like more friendly. And then he kind of just reached out to me.
Is Ben in New York?
No, but he makes a lot of trips to New York.
Okay.
Yeah, he's there a lot, or here a lot. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, so then Kenny kind of reached out and was like, hey, can you record me for this thing? And then we just he kind of liked my whole vibe, which was just like, I was like, whatever you want to do, like, I'm down. We can do anything you want. And because he's really into like some pretty out stuff in the studio. And then he kind of started hiring me to kind of like produce these records. Like, he's like, what do you think we should do? And I'd be like, let's run everything through this delay and just make it go crazy. He was like, yeah. So it was like a lot of that. And then we like made a record where I played on it, and then I ended up producing like this record that's coming out of his. It's a triple vinyl that's gonna be really bananas. It's like, I think you guys are gonna really, really feel this one. It's like him and Dalius, this other drummer guy, just improvised these little vignettes in the studio, and then we just kind of added to them and each one is like a little song, but each has a completely different feeling. Like I play acoustic guitar, Dalius plays trombone, they're singing. It's like really, really varied and weird, but it's like 31 songs, I think.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Did you produce the one that he made for your birthday rocket ship record?
No, he made that one.
Because that is bonkers.
That's a bonkers one.
Yeah, well, if there's time, we'll listen to that. But for those of you listening out there, we'll have the link up to the Rocket Ship Bandcamp, of course. And there's a very cool record that came out that was given to Michael as a gift for a birthday. And it's like all these incredible musicians covering Michael's music. And yeah, Kenny's one on there is like it's a sound world that I cannot comprehend at all, even a little. And I know it has to do with the vibraphone. And you know, Ben, I played with Ben a couple weeks ago, and I was asking him about their duo record that I love so much, and he said he's talking about like dipping the vibraphone bars down into music while he's playing it and all this. And I was like, man, he's just on some other stuff, you know?
Yeah, well, he builds a lot of instruments.
Yeah.
So that's part of what he built. He calls them the slide vibes, which are just like vibes that are sideways that go into water. So you can change the pitch of them.
That's
I need to see a picture of this, because when you say sideway vibes, I think about the frame too. And I'm just like, no. That won't do. You know,
it is crazy.
Awesome. Cool. Well, yeah, I do want to, there's so much awesome music that you made. I want to get to rocket ship, and I definitely want to hang out with practitioner and talker. You know, blows so much stuff out of the water, and it's tricky listening too. You know, but anyway, can we check out some of Beep?
Sure.
Yeah. So this is with Matt. Oh no! This is with Sam and Nate. Sam Ospavat and Nate Brenner, and yeah, I had crab cakes on deck. What do you think about that?
I love crab cakes.
All right. Did you write?
Yeah, this one is mine. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, your discography is so vast and varied. So it was fun to go through and check things out, see what, you know, like where we could pull from what, and try to get a full picture. But it's challenging, man. So as we often prescribe on this show, there's a lot of heavy homework that comes with this episode for the listeners. Very nice Sam moment.
Yeah, Sam's really going for it there. Classic Sam.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yes and no. I mean, I feel like there's like this kind of crispiness that I don't always You know what I mean? He can be a very gestural and organic sounding drummer to me. Even though I know he's with Kim on all the polyrhythm and extremely accurate with all that. But this, I don't think I would have guessed that was Sam, having listened to that.
Oh, that's interesting.
Track. Yeah.
But, I mean, also that his playing has changed a lot. I mean, it's funny when I'm sure both of you guys have this experience with friends and people that you play with, like watching people kind of change or grow, like musically, is really kind of like one of my favorite things of being a musician. I would say is like not having now known Sam for we've been playing together for on and off now for more than 12 years, I guess, maybe 14 years almost. At the beginning, he was I feel like all of the crazy shit he was doing and all of like the really like, he was just wanted to play super fast and just wanted to have all of this chops. And now he has all of those chops, but he also has this extremely strong sense of time that at the time I think he was always striving to get better at. And now it's like, I can hear it. Like I can hear all that work he put in. And it's like so deep when he plays now. It's like, the time feel is so much deeper even than it was back then, which is really interesting.
Yeah. Last time I played with him was 4 years ago, I believe, with Lisa. We were out on the, we went out east to play with her Cosmic Comic Sextet. And he came on board and just read the book and felt amazing to play with. It was really special. I was like,
that's cool.
You're right in there.
Yeah.
Cool. You have a little double kick on the.
He's got that going real strong. Yeah.
I was like, you're doing that on a little jazz kit, man. Wow.
He actually has invented, I think, a way of doing double kick where he has like his left foot both on the kick pedal and the hi-hat, so he can play swing and like have the hi-hat on 2 and 4, but still be doing these crazy double kick with his heel of his left foot. So it's like these kind of rolls while he's like playing like. So weird. It's a very specific, bizarre thing he's come up with.
It was extremely confusing at first in rehearsal because I just came in. I didn't just look at his feet. You know what I mean?
Sure. Why would you?
But I'm always like, I love just like kind of hanging. But the cool thing about the vibes is you get a lot of time to just chill and listen to other people. You're not always playing. You know what I mean? So like, I'm usually just checking out what the drummers are doing. And really trying to key into that, and that like it just there was cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, you're like his hands are not doing that.
I was like, this is not correct. This is wrong. I stopped the band and I went and looked at his feet. No.
You're like, let me see those feet.
Let me see those feet.
What was going on in that bit of crab cakes that we just heard?
So that song. So that. Yeah, that's a fun record. There's a lot about that record I love, and I feel like it was a turning point for me musically. Actually, that record. But at that point, that was really right at the juncture for me when I was like going really sort of giving up being like, oh, I'm a jazz musician. I think like I was still really like that had been I was like, I'm going to play jazz. I got to play all the standards. I got to know how to play the Coltrane Matrix. Like I had all these like ideas of what it meant to be a jazz musician. And I think making that record kind of was like, oh, you don't have to do that. Like you can make like beautiful music that is in, maybe references that, but is like really separate. And I think that was like the record that helped me. And actually really Nate and Sam were huge. They were just like, what are you talking about? You can do whatever you want. And I was like, oh yeah. Like, just kind of helping me get out of my own head about stuff. And that song is actually in some ways maybe the most jazz oriented on the record, in that it was like, I wrote it kind of based on these like Andrew Hill compositions. Like,
oh, cool.
And I think I sent you one of my favorite Andrew Hill things.
Dusk,
like this Dusk. Yeah.
It's such an amazing record.
Oh my gosh. That's the greatest. And his playing to me I think he's probably in my top 3 favorite jazz pianists. Like I love his playing. It's so weird, but somehow so much in the tradition. And you're like, why does he sound like he's never playing in time? And somehow it's always in time. It's like just a really weird thing. And so that was a song kind of dedicated to that. That melody that I play, like right as you were fading it out, it's like this melody that's all harmonized. And it's kind of like, sort of like a Andrew Hill-esque kind of thing.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, Andrew for me is really interesting. I of course love that record Judgment with Bobby on there. But transcribing him is so difficult because Richard Davis is on the session and he doesn't play roots or time.
Right.
The bassist, you know what I mean? So like I can learn Bobby's solo just fine.
Right.
You know what I mean? But yeah, every time I put on Point of Departure, you know, and you just have his kind of like understated solo where he's right there in the form, and then Dolphy just comes and tears that song in half right after that, you know, just like so many incredible moments across all of those. But I feel like the arranging and the sound in Dusk is really special.
Yeah, it's really beautiful.
That's an amazing record. And that was the first Andrew Hill record that my friend Colin showed me like back in high school, and I was not ready for it.
Yeah.
It took a while, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Ooh. Well, I'm sorry I cut the melody off. We can play the excerpt longer when we drop it in. Yeah.
Keep the melody in post.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so before you started working with Ben on Practitioner, what was your relationship with Steve Lacy, or, you know, his music, I should say?
Yeah. I mean, you know, that he's one of those people that, like, I remember the first time I heard it, I was like, I must have more of this. Like, this is great. Whatever this is, I must have more. And like, you know, you hear like, especially I mean, this is true of all music, I guess, but in jazz, it's so person specific. You're like, who's on this record? Like, oh, I love this drummer or whatever. And I remember, especially when I was at Oberlin and I was just going through tons of records and just listening to everything I get my hands on, I remember hearing Steve Lacy and being like, I've never heard anything like this. And at first I was like, it's so almost harsh in its like clarity that I was like, there's something almost wrong with this music. And then I kept going back to it. And there's one record in particular that I think might be in my top favorites of all, is that one with Don Cherry. I forget what it's called, but they play a bunch of Duke tunes and maybe a couple Monk tunes, but it's just the two of them playing together is just fantastic. And it's I think Billy Higgins on drums too, so it's like just beautiful.
Oh wow.
Anyway, that was the record that really got me into Steve Lacy. I was like, I couldn't get enough of it. And then also those duo records with Mal Waldron.
Oh yeah,
I love those. They're just so stripped down. There's nothing extra.
Yeah,
not a single extra note. So that was kind of my thing. I didn't really know much about his later stuff and the more like synth stuff and all like the opera stuff. Like there's so much. Like Steve Lacy has a million records and they're all like, they're all kind of cool. And some of them are, they're quite hard. They're quite hard to digest, you know. They're like,
I've actually ran into that as an issue because it's a massive catalog. And then sometimes I'll be like, I'll check out some Steve Lacy. And it's just like, whoa. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
I have no idea what's going on.
Exactly.
I'm not sure what to do or where to start. And I feel like I need to get a book, like a reference book on Steve Lacy to help me like navigate, you know?
I do know.
So the ones that you just talked about with Mal Waldron and with Don Cherry, I will go there.
Yeah, those are a little more easy to access. But I mean, you know, it's interesting. His music, he did so much. I think that's part of what it is he was searching. You know, a lot of musicians, I feel like they kind of find their thing and then they're like, this is my thing, I do my thing. And he was that was the opposite for him. He's like, I did that thing, now I'll do this thing. I did that thing, so now it's time to try this thing. And it just kind of, I think he got into some pretty wild territory.
Yes. Yeah. Very cool. So I would love to talk about Practitioner, and then I kind of want to delve into the world of Rocket Ship and what that project is and has become, and it seems to take on. Well, anyway, we'll get there. Practitioner is, you know, as y'all say, it's mastered as a single track. It's a realization of.
So this is an interesting question I had actually, because I think what I saw was that the premiere when you guys played at the Makeout Room?
That was like, We played, we actually started this project in like 2014.
Oh, geez.
The first time there was like it was like a commemoration of Steve Lacy's death, actually, at the Cap Street Music School or whatever it's called.
Community music.
Community
Center.
music, yeah. And Rova was hosting it, and they had asked Ben to do something because they knew Ben was connected to Steve Lacy, and he asked me. He was like, "Hey, do you want to play these etudes with me?" And I was like, "Sure." I didn't know anything about them, and so we learned them. And basically, at that concert, I played piano only, and we just played the etudes and then just improvised, kind of like as if it was like a jazz form or something.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the first time we worked on the music. And then he was like, "Let's do this. Let's like record this music." And that's kind of how the project kind of came into what it is now.
With the more like effects and stuff.
And just like kind of reimagining how to perform the pieces, like not just as almost like vehicles for improvisation, but how to like kind of, they became these collages. And so they became almost like sonic collages rather than like improvising just freely over something. There's some of that, but it's more like we try to like, we take because the etude, each one has like 5 to 7 building blocks, and each one of those we tried to like turn into something. So it became a little more of this kind of long form composition and less of like a jazz approach to it, I guess.
And I'm just curious, like, because the CD is divided into tracks, while on Bandcamp it's one track. Yeah, and it's I think that, I mean, that's really interesting, just because like you mentioned that the different track names on Bandcamp. I'm curious about that presentation.
I think there was a bit of confusion, or not. Maybe confusion is not right the word, but like sort of like we didn't have a clear. It's like I feel like we didn't really understand what we were doing until, again, like sometime later. Like we recorded all that music, and we didn't know at the time in the studio how it was going to be. We didn't know we were going to like collage it together for hours and hours and hours and like make this weird blob. We thought like, oh, we'll just pick the best ones and stick them together and whatever. And so I think even we made the record, we put out the record, then we started performing the music live, and it took on this whole other thing of almost like it got really almost like meditative. Like we would just repeat the same thing for like 25 minutes, and it got like real out. We would just, because we didn't really, the whole thing kind of just it was like evolving as we were doing it. So maybe that's part of that, is that we were like, well, it should be one piece, but we want to make sure that we mention the names of the etudes so that it's clear that it's separate piece. Like I think that we just weren't really clear of how to present it exactly. Yeah. At that point.
Well, and the record itself. Okay, let me ask you. So, was Eli doing any like max processing on some of this?
He did. The processing that's happening live was like he was running stuff through like some kind of modular synth setup that he had.
Okay.
And a few outboard effects units, like a delay and some kind of other thing. I can't remember what it was exactly now.
Did he ever do that with y'all live?
Yeah, we performed live with him. It was super fun. Super fun. It was great. We've done a bunch of stuff with Eli live, like me, him, and Hamir, and Ben, and just me and Eli have performed live. Like I've played a bunch now. Actually, I've done maybe like 10 shows with Eli where he's just doing processing, and it's like the most fun you can ever have.
Yeah,
it's a dream.
Yeah, because listening to this record, it almost feels like a tape piece in a way. It's like sonic collage, and these elements are there, but it has become something entirely different. And this one's really hard to just pick a single part to play from. So, it's like, 37 minutes long, and it is built up of these smaller, these 7 smaller, like I guess etudes that you had actually learned and developed. But yeah, like I know y'all should just check it out if you haven't. I'm gonna drop us in about halfway through, and let's just listen to a little bit of this. So I believe in the beginning of that excerpt, I was more processing and Ben, is that right?
Yeah, now I remember what that piece of gear is. That's an H949, which is like this kind of like 80s like delay and pitch like pitch shifter type of gear, and you can hear like now I heard it and I was like, oh, I know that sound. That's that, like it's like pitch shifting Ben in this crazy way.
Oh yeah, it sounds almost like what's the one with the nice primary colors on it, like the
prime time.
Yeah, prime time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then that's you entering later, and it sounds like you're playing actual, like you're showing some of the material from which you had derived all this, like that one ascending line that you were repeating. So yeah, I kind of dropped this in on a part where it's not Michael heavy, but I thought it was really fascinating because it does sound like it gives a bit of the collage and the processing. And then you hear Ben kind of dip into a little Benism, like just at the tail end there. He's still doing this nice little gesture right there, and you're like, there's Ben. It's really nice, It's super cool because he's just so clean and lyrical throughout.
Yeah, I know.
No matter what's going on,
that's his thing.
Easy, relaxed, clean, lyrical. I love
always.
it. Yeah.
That being said, I think. So we were in rehearsal. This is like hearsay, I guess, because Carl told me that Ben told him this. But I thought that this was interesting, like not knowing this music before I had seen it. But he was saying that Ben said that this repertoire, the Hocus Pocus repertoire, is the most difficult thing he's ever had to learn.
It could be. I mean, it's interesting because I learned it, because my reading is like so questionable. He handed me all this music, and I was like, I looked at it and I was like, oh, this is horrible. I can't look at this. It's like these huge intervals, like going way up above the stat, like way. And I was like, I can't look at this. Just send me the recordings. So I just learned it from the record, which I felt like was much more helpful to me because I could hear it and then I could feel it on the piano, and it didn't feel so just weird and disconnected. And I know it's written for soprano sax, but he's playing it on clarinet, and clarinet's impossible anyway, and he's trying to play this like basically impossible thing on the soprano saxophone on the clarinet. So it's pretty insane that he's doing it.
Yeah.
It is. On the piano, it doesn't sit well at all. Like it's not comfortable to play, but it's really fun. It's like super, these huge it's basically all made up of mostly like fourths, tritones, and seconds. Almost all of the material.
Oh, it sounds like
in some combinations.
Laminsky hang a little bit, like when you get into intra ultra proliferated or whatever,
Yeah. Steve Lacey writes, deliberately made so as to be hard to play.
Yeah. That's what it feels like. Although once we got into it, I was like, it feels good. Like it kind of started to feel good to play. But yeah,
you guys don't make it sound hard to play.
Well, that's good, I guess.
Yeah.
I think that's good. Yeah. It was fun. It was fun to learn and I love playing this music with Ben. And when we started doing it live, like I had a keyboard set up, and I had a little processing station that I would like run Ben through. So I could be like doing effects on Ben as I was playing. It was pretty fun. Yeah. We were having a good time.
Sounds like a dream.
It was a dream.
That's amazing. So did you already, had you already moved when you recorded this?
Yeah. I was living in New York. We recorded it in like 2016, maybe 15, 16.
When did you move back to New York?
2014.
Oh, okay, cool.
What was the occasion? Just like done with it?
No, not at all. Actually, honestly, quite the opposite. I was, so my wife and I have been together since college, and she moved to Oakland. We lived there the whole time for 10 years, and the whole time we were like, oh, maybe we should move back to the East Coast. She's also from the East Coast. And we're like, oh, we should move back. We just like kept staying there. and the more I stayed, the more I was like, I love it here. I never want to leave. I love the Bay Area. And it was like, I think we maybe hit a really sweet spot too, where it was like still kind of affordable, and we had a lot of work, and it was, obviously that's not true. Like the affordability thing is, it just had we just hit a really nice spot. A lot of friends were there, and then around that time, she wanted to go back to school, and the master's program she wanted to go to, they were mostly in New York. And so we were like, well, this might be the time to move. And I was like, I don't want to move. I don't want to go back to New York. I never want to live in New York again. And she was like, we should, and my whole family is here. We were thinking about having kids. And it was like, just kind of like what you're saying, Bob, of like just wanting to be close to family. So we kind of, it was actually, now I don't regret the move, but it took me a couple of years to get over it. I was kind of heartbroken. I love the Bay Area.
Yeah. It's a beautiful place. I mean, and you were here during a really special time in the music in the Bay, you know, and you were a huge part of that. And, you know, just, I can imagine that being really a difficult decision to make, a big move to undertake. But it's really cool that you've fallen into working regularly at Figure Eight and working closely with Eli, and you had, seems like you're doing extremely well with the move, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it definitely, I think obviously New York's an amazing place. It's like, New York is New York. And it's like, I think it's funny that this is my hometown. I think it's weird to have New York as your hometown. It's just weird. You're like, it never feels like a hometown. It's always like this weird place. Even though it's comfortable, it's still like, it's so intense, and just, there's just so much energy here. Like I was just out in the Bay a few weeks ago. We're finishing up a new Shimsheimer record, actually.
Nice.
And
nice.
And it was just being there. I was like, the feeling just came back. Like as soon as I stepped off the airplane, the smell and the air, it just hit me, and I was like, my whole body like went into this like I felt like everything slowed down. And I miss that. Like New York is everything is just so like, you can't. No matter what you're doing, it's just like that here.
Yeah. I know this feeling. Like sometimes when you land in SFO and it looks like you're just about to go straight into the ocean, but then you like kind of just make it onto, the little, and then the way that the light is sometimes,
I know,
just everything feels really beautiful, and it is nice to be flying into that, to be going home sometimes,
But you've been there for a long time, Margaret. You've been there for like, you've been in the Bay for like 12 years, 13 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a long time.
Yeah. So it really feels like home at this point. So when did you start? Okay. So I don't know if we're going to get to listening to this, but in Young Nudist, you were making songs, right? And so when you first started the Rocket Ship project, first of all, when would you say that was? And was it primarily as just a way for you to make music yourself, or it is since?
Yeah. So basically what happened is I made that Young Nudist record, and that was like the name of my band. Like when we played, it was called Young Nudist. I made like an EP also. And then the name actually became problematic only because if you Google Young Nudist, it's very bad. Yes. And also if like the people that started following me like on Facebook and stuff, it was like, it wasn't cool. It was like not a vibe that I was into, kind of this pedophile kind of vibe. So I was like, all right, I got to get out of this vibe. So I hadn't figured out a new name, and actually a friend of mine was like, just started calling me Rocket Ship. Like that was just the name. He was like, that was like my nickname. He was like, oh, we're going to call you Rocket Ship. And I was like, okay. And then, when I started to make that first Michael Rocket Ship record, I was like, what should I call this? And I was like, Michael Rocket Ship's kind of like seems like a good name. So I just went with it. And the only reason, part of the reason that I just have been calling, so like, it's kind of, a lot of stuff has fallen under that umbrella, mostly just because I've never really felt good about like using my own name on a project. I don't know why. Just like it never felt right to just be like Michael Coleman. And so I just wanted to have like an alias that I could just put music out under, but as in the past I've had so many different bands, I was like, couldn't I just call it all one thing but not my name? That was kind of how it's come to be lately is like just being like, I want to put out music under my name, but not have it be my real name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I totally hear you on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bob does that with Denny Breakfast.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And I feel insane sometimes about the amount of music that I've written that's been interspersed amongst different projects and iterations, and I just wish somehow I could just tie it as you know, to me as an entity, but like it's just all over the place.
I know.
You know? But
I know.
So yeah, good call. And that does explain why, you know, it's just the project at hand, and that's the moniker. And yeah.
Are you familiar with the band Michael Learns to Rock?
No. I should definitely check that out though.
Yeah. They're like a adult contemporary band.
Nice.
They're from like Europe, like Holland or somewhere, and they're not popular there. They're only popular in like Southeast Asia.
Oh, I like the sound of this. Yeah. Sounding right up my alley. I should tell you guys a funny story while we're here. Maybe you've heard this before, but you know, like at some point with the Shimsheimer trio, I got this email. There was a guy, he was like, hello, my name is Marcel Shimsheimer. I see that you have a Shimsheimer family band. I also have a Shimsheimer family band. And I was like, what the hell? Is this some kind of weird spam? And then I started to read the email, and it was like, he's like from Holland, and he has two brothers, and they have a Shimsheimer family band. And he was a little bit like, what is the deal with your family band? Like, he was kind of like, I could tell he was a little bit like, I don't think this is cool that you also have a Shimsheimer family band. And then I wrote back to him, and I was like, hey man, like, it's cool. We're not really Shimsheimers. We just like picked that name at random. It's really hilarious that you also have a Shimsheimer family band. And then he was super friendly. And so we've been kind of in contact with them. And
I'm
so
glad he was friendly about it.
He was. It could have gone bad, but we've been talking about trying to like go over there and play like a double bill with them.
That would be amazing.
Didn't he listen to your music?
Yeah, they were like, your music is cool. Their music is really hilarious. Like, we've written all of our songs now are named after them or like fake relatives of theirs. Like there's Bob and Marcel and so John's really into this one drum video of Bob. He's like up on a roof playing E-drums with like headphones on, and he's just shredding these like E-drums, like just like all, and it's just like really incredible.
Wow.
So yeah. Anyway.
Well, I can't wait to learn more about the
real Shimsheimers.
That's hilarious, man.
I know, it's amazing.
Shared Bill World Tour.
Yeah, hit the road.
Cool. Man, I'm also like realizing I want to play some of the religious phase. Man, yeah, crazy. So much music.
Focus.
Yeah. All right, let's listen to some different examples of rocket ship moniker. This one.
Well, hold on. Can I ask just a question? Because just on your Bandcamp, you have all of there's like rocket ship EPs 1 through 7 released all on the same day. Like,
oh yeah. So let me just clarify something. There's rocket ship. So there's rocket ship. There's 4 rocket ship EPs, and then there's 4 things that are called rocket ship 4 through 7. And those are actually all the same music played by 4 different ensembles, and it's a quartet, a quintet, a sextet, and a septet playing the same material.
Wait, the EPs are the same as the other?
No, the EPs are totally separate from the 4 through 7 thing.
Oh,
yeah, it gets real crazy in there. I'm really tying people up in knots now, but that's that was all released. That was like I recorded them over the course of a year, and then I think I put them all out on my birthday.
Yeah, I remember that. It's like just a big old flump.
Just bloop it down there.
Yeah, big drop.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So that's what that is. The rocket ship EPs are more like song stuff, and those are more like sort of jazz, improvisational kind of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, but these are what I was referring to earlier, where you have pulse, long, 3+4.
Exactly.
So you're just taking an idea. I would love to. So is ballad improvised?
No, it's it's just one melody. It's just like a string of notes.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. Have you ever I played a gig once with the bassist and he just asked me to improvise a ballad in D flat and he kind of did off really slow.
That sounds nice.
That was a fascinating exercise. But it was really hard for me at the time.
Yeah, that's hard.
I was like pretty young. But cool. Well, yeah, let's dig around. Do you mind if we listen to some of the newer like EP4? Something off of that?
Yeah, be my guest.
Cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do whatever's going on. Let's check out some of that.
It's not over yet. I'm still going strong. I'm still radiating neutrons or whatever's going on. How am I not dead? Days are piling on. I'm still detoxifying ions or whatever's going on. You took the credit, it's the only prudent choice. Who would still be standing? Who would still be songs and more? It's not over yet. Things are running long. I'm still extemporizing.
So, you didn't write the lyrics to these songs.
To three of the songs on that, I didn't know. Those are all Sneal.
And just for our listeners, who is Sneal?
Great question. I'm still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, not just for our listeners. Just
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Sneal, this is I'm going to take you guys back to like 2009, maybe. So I played in a band called Kapowski, which was like
I forgot about Kapowski.
Yeah, Kapowski. So Jesse, who wrote all the songs for that band, his brother is a guy named Jacob who played drums in Kapowski when I first joined the band, before Sam played drums. And I met him in the band. We, didn't really know each other. And then one day I showed up to rehearsal and Jesse was like, I kicked Jacob out of the band. I was like, you kicked your brother out of the band? He's like, yeah, he's gone. I also kicked him out of my house. I was like, damn, Jesse, that's cold. So then that was all I knew about Jacob. I didn't see. And then then about a year and a half later, he came back. Like wherever he was, he showed back up, and he was like, had become a visual artist, which he never had been before. And he was just making tons and tons of art, like drawings, paintings, everything. But he was completely untrained, had never made any art before. And then I was like, man, I love your art. And we kind of became friends. And then he started tweeting. He would be putting up like 80 tweets a day, and they're all like super funny. And that was when he became Sneal. Okay. That was like his name. And that's when we started that band Religious Phase. And sort of like at that, and sort of we've had this ongoing musical relationship since then. But at some point I was like, hey, do you want to just...
What does he play?
He's a drummer mostly, but he plays guitar also.
Okay.
So now he and I have just been collaborating. We have a whole record of songs that's not out yet that he wrote all the words to and I wrote all the music to. And we made a movie. It's like a feature length, like a 30-minute length film that goes with the music.
Whoa.
That's sitting on my shelf right now. I don't know what to do with it, but
crazy.
So so he and so Sneal is like a major, I feel like now I do a lot of stuff with Sneal, and those lyrics, he just he texts me the lyrics. I'll get a text in the morning that's like just lyrics, and I just write music to them. That's like how we operate.
Is he in New York or?
He was living in LA, and then he actually moved into my apartment because during the pandemic, my family, we moved upstate to like near Kingston, New York. We were like subletting a place, and Sneal was subletting our apartment. So he was living in New York, we were upstate, and then now he's kind of like between New York and LA. He's sort of like bouncing around a little bit.
Cool.
That's quite the two cities to be between.
Yeah. He's got a lot going on. But anyway, so that's just sort of how those lyrics came to be. It's like, I think we just hit it off over like our shared love of total absurdity, and his lyrics just really like speak to me on some level.
Right on.
Well, yeah, and I mean the overall vibe too. Is the one that you did in full collaboration the Minty that you're talking about? Or?
There's that too. So he wrote a bunch of lyrics for like the first Michael Rocket Ship record, and then we made Minty, which is like a collaboration, and now we have another record apart from this whole movie thing. We have a whole other record that we've made that's also on the shelf.
Okay.
So yeah, he's a very prolific person. So like when you work with him, it's just like there's just a lot. It's like he's constantly producing. He'll be like, I have 20 songs, here they are. And you're like, where did these come from? He's like, I wrote them this morning. It's like he's that kind of guy.
Yeah.
You know?
Crazy.
So yeah. Anyway, but yeah, Minty is like, that was kind of, we have a band that we're actually about to hopefully play live soon, which is like Hamir, because you know Hamir moved to New York.
Yeah. So
Hamir is playing drums
in
that band. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. When Hamir plays, for that context, is he doing any electronic stuff, or is he just doing drums?
You know, we thought he was going to do electronics, but he just showed up and he sounded so good on the drums that we were like, there doesn't need to be any electronics. Like, it sounds so good. It's crazy.
Yeah, he's really good.
He's so good.
That's the thing.
He's just such a good drummer.
Yeah. Know? Dang. The thing with going back to religious faith a little bit, I have some questions because the lineup on this is insane. You have like Booker, Stardrum, Shazad, and Kurt. I mean, Kurt is on a lot of your records. Kurt Kothheimer.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so were you already out east when you made this record?
So that's the third one. Yeah. Okay. So that is, we made the first two while I was still living in the Bay. And then the third one we made in New York. And that's actually, I think is one of my favorite records of how it was made, because the way we did it was we went into the studio and we got on headphones and we used no acoustic instruments. We only used things that could be DI'd. And we plugged in all the DIs, and then we made it so that each song we had a different way of listening. Like either you listen to no one else, or you just listen to the person next to you, or everyone listens to one person. Or so that the way that the music was made was like really insane, because you like never knew what anyone else was playing.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
It was fun.
I love compositional recording games like that, though. It's one of my favorite things to do.
It often yields really fun results because it's just so surprising. And you're like, I found myself watching people's body language more than, because I couldn't hear them. I was like, whoa, Mark was playing guitar, and I watched Mark. I was like, oh, he's moving like this, so I'm going to play like this. Like it kind of influenced, like, it was cool.
He's looking pretty kumbaya over there.
Yeah, I'll get into that. I'll get in there.
Let's listen to just a pinch of this. These are all short songs. I'm going to play, how about Mostly Chiropractic? It's a minute and a half.
Sure.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Well. In the interest of what would be interesting, with a love that likes you at the very least, promises are being made. And posturing is not appearance. Posturing is mostly chiropractic. Sheer relevance is radical enough. so the goals can lumber in. It's your lumbar, isn't it? And the game is shrinking down. You look like you're in a lot of pain. We can play with a clearer head and with a curling hand.
Yes. That was like a kind of a beautiful moment on that record, and the energy is all over the map on that record. Some of it is like just, you know, kind of avant-garde feeling, you know, and then some of the lyrics can be like very, very absurd.
Yeah,
you know, but
that was like someone playing a sample, right?
I think I was actually playing that synth or something. In retrospect, I think I know what keyboard it is. I don't know where he got it from actually, because I don't think I played that on the session. Like it's he like put together. There's some stuff on that record where he just like put some weird things together. Like I think Lauren Benedict's on that record, and he like recorded him in San Francisco. There's just like a whole bunch of weird stuff. So Sneal did some other stuff with some of the material, but yeah, Jesse Rimler on that record plays strictly Soviet drums. It's like this Soviet drum machine with drum pads. And that's the only thing he played on the record, and he couldn't hear anyone else, and he's just in there just banging around. It sounds insane. It was one of the best parts of my day.
Wow,
that's awesome. Well, you know, we like to do this Bandcamp recommends for the Bandcamp Fridays. Sometimes we had Rob before Rob was on, Rob Ewing.
Yeah.
Before he was on as a guest proper, we had him on as a Bandcamp recommends, and he spoke very highly of Rocket Ship Sing Standards Volume 3. So I want to play one of those as well. And you know, I really like
wait, can you I'm curious what you have to say about this series of the thing that you're doing here, this Rocket Ship Sing Standards.
Well, it's a bunch of different stuff. One, these are like my favorite songs. I love like the Great American Songbook. I can't get enough of it. I mean, I've been, playing those songs for so many years, like with cabaret singers and stuff. And I just always loved these songs. Like they're like really, I feel strongly about them. And I always feel like, I mean, there's very few singers that I actually want to listen to sing these songs. Like when I think about who I want to hear sing like standards, it's almost nobody. Like there's like Billie Holiday. I'll listen to Billie Holiday sing standards all day long. And there's a couple other singers, but like so many times I just hear people and I'm not, it's, no, they're great singers. It's just like not how I want to hear the songs presented. So I sort of had a way that I wanted to present the songs, which was in a more like treating them less like these jazz things and more like songs, like you would hear like a Beatles song or a Bjork song or maybe a pop song, I guess and how they used to be actually sung, like when they first were written, they were pop songs. So that's part of it. And the other part of it was, I just am production wise, I just wanted to use like sounds that I thought were interesting. And it's also kind of an inside joke for me and Nate, because we always said we're like, well, when we turn 50, we'll make a standards record. And we haven't gotten there yet, but I was like, I'm sort of getting there a little early, but that was my thought about it.
Cool.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it really does stand out that, you're just treating these, they're not long. There's not shredding.
20-minute solos.
Yeah. People. Yeah. But, and the arrangements are all really, even if they're succinct, they're really interesting, and the sounds are super cool, and the players across the board are amazing. How about let's listen to a bit. I really like The Very Thought of You, both as a song and on this record. Is that cool?
Oh, sure.
Awesome.
and I forget to do those little ordinary things that everyone ought to do. Living in a kind of daydream, I'm happy as a king, and foolish though it may seem to me, that's everything. The mere idea of you, the longing here for you. You'll never know how slow the moments go till I'm near to you. I see your face in every flower, your eyes and stars above. It's just the thought of you, the very thought of you I love. I see your face in every flower, your eyes and the stars above. Just the thought of you, the very thought of you I love.
Excellent. It says Arkin is on drums and drum processing. Was that
And all processing.
and all processing? That was my
Yeah.
question. So his hand was in deep on the decision making on the.
He just sent me like, he was like, I was like, hey, do you want to play drums and like do some processing? He's like, yes. And then he just sent me that. He was like, and I was like, okay,
I've
cool.
processed.
Yeah, it's fully processed. I put it in, I blended, I pressed blend, and you're good to go. So yeah, he just sent me that, and I was like, I couldn't figure out how to like incorporate it, and I was like, oh, that'll just be the solo section. Will just be that. That was like my answer to the question. It was really cool. I mean, he does really cool stuff with like the computer stuff that he does. It's really beautiful.
Awesome.
Right on.
Yeah. Beautiful project and realizations of those songs.
Thanks. I'm right now. I'm almost finished with a Rocket Ship Plays Bebop. Almost done.
Whoa.
Volume 1. We'll see how many I can squeeze out. But
is that kind of a similar take?
It's sort of like it's similar. It's a little. I recorded all on a 4-track cassette player, so everything is highly varispeeded. So nothing is the original speed that I played it, and so everything is just really crazy. And then I also
like Lenny Tristano kind of
it's like sort of has that vibe, and then but similar synths and drum machines, and then but some of the songs are like really abstract versions of the songs, and some are more like kind of solo head kind of. But I think you'll enjoy it. It's pretty weird, I think.
Yeah, that's super exciting.
Yeah.
I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we usually make a point of asking people what they have on the horizon. You've already casually mentioned at least 3 that I remember in our talk. So you have Rocket Ship Plays Bebop. You have another Shimsheimer Family Band record coming out. And then another full length with Sneal.
Yeah. Yeah, that's also going to be under Michael Rocket Ship, but
I mean, okay. Is there anything else like of your I'm sure that you're involved in a ton of like, sideman and recording on other people's projects kind of stuff. But is there anything else that you have on the direct horizon that you're excited about, just under your own, any one of your monikers, or I guess it would all just be Rocket Ship at this point, according.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty pumped about this new Sneal record, the one that's just under his name, Sneal. We worked on it, and I think it's his best stuff, and the songs are really cool. It's like, I almost feel like it's like him trying to play like top 40 music, but like he has no idea what that actually sounds like, and neither do I. So it just sounds insane. It's like crazy people trying to make pop hits or something with like lyrics that are really questionable. Like you just don't know what's going on. Like he has one whole song that's just about smogging his car. Like it's just so it's really beautiful, I think. And I like Sneal's work because it feels absurd, but there's also a kind of delicate emotional thing to it that is happening. So
excellent.
Nice.
Anyway, yeah.
Exciting.
So yeah. I'm also really excited because I haven't heard what's happening with this, but Jordan actually sent me the Wiener Kids last Wiener Kids record that he never put out, and he's like, I want you to do something with this. So okay. I just added like kind of electronics to it and sort of did this weird mastering job to it with electronics, and I think it sounds really cool, but I haven't heard from Jordan, so I'm hoping that comes out soon.
Yeah. Awesome. Well,
yeah.
I mean, you sent it back to him?
Yeah, it was been like 6 months ago.
Oh, wait, is that?
He was talking about it he's our first podcast guest. He was talking about it on our first podcast.
Yeah. Amazing.
Actually. Yeah.
What did he say? Did he say he's going to put it out?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's looking for like the path to do that.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think he does want to put it out, but
yeah,
big time. He's excited about it.
Cool.
Well, I wanted to ask you just about before we wrap it up here, the Resort Music album.
Mm-hmm.
I just from the visuals here and from what you say about it, I get a sense of like vaporwave. But then I listen to it, and and it's like not the vibe.
Not the vibe, no.
Do you? I mean, what can I? Well, can I read what you wrote in Bandcamp here? Because I love it. It's like Michael Coleman's Resort Music is the strange radio station that was playing the elevator at the vacation destination you visited last winter. You didn't really notice it, but there was something both relaxing and unsettling about it as you stepped into the lobby on your way down to the beach. Like a vague memory of a dream you recall years later. Was that a song I knew? You ask yourself as you slip into the waves. Questions like, what am I doing here? And is this my life now? Begin to force their way into your mind as you float out into the sea. I really love this a lot. I mean, I feel like this blurb says it all almost.
It really does. That kind of sums it all up.
But I mean, was there any inspiration from the genre of vaporwave, or do you even like vaporwave?
Honestly, I've been very confused about vaporwave. I think I don't know what it is. I really want to check. If you have any recommendations, please send me, because I feel like I don't know what to check out.
I guess I have a couple of recommendations. It's kind of a genre that's not worth checking out.
Here's your recommendation.
Okay. Right here. I got a recommendation right here.
No, it's like there's a couple that I spin regularly, but I mean, the genre in itself is like not really. It's interesting because it's not really, most of it is not original music. It's just sampled music, right? So it's, make what of that you will, but it's like presented in a way that's like, I think this paragraph that you wrote is like the vibe of, that's the vaporwave vibe, I think. And even if the music on this album, I think is not the genre, but is like the same like essence seems to be what you want to capture, I guess.
My understanding of vaporwave, and it's very, very vague, was that it like there's a kind of political element to it, or sort of like some sort of anti-capitalist element. But
yeah, for sure. I mean, like most things, there's lots of different aspects to it. But yeah, it's there's an anti-capitalist sort of like hopelessness to it.
Oh wow, like a nihilist kind of.
Yeah, like kind of like we live in a dystopian future type of thing.
Right. Oh yeah, I'd say I'm on board with that.
I have no idea what vaporwave is. Just for the record.
Okay, I'll share with you guys. Well. I'll share with you guys like some of my. I went down this rabbit hole quite deep for a little while, but like I said, like there's so much vaporwave. It's like, I mean, you could listen to vaporwave forever because it's just like there was so much of it made. It kind of has had its day, I think.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah. There was a time where I was going to work at 5 a.m. in downtown San Francisco in the financial district, and I was just getting into vaporwave, and like walking at like 5 a.m. when it's completely dark and there was no one around, listening to vaporwave was the right combination of things. Going to my corporate job at Oracle. Wow. So it was like,
whoa,
that all worked.
Yeah.
So if I want to get into it, I must first, in order to get the job, I should get a corporate job. Go as early as you used to. Listen to it extensively.
Yeah, there's a lot of vaporwave has to do with this sort of like the abandoned malls and like spaces from the 90s that were 80s, late 80s, early 90s, you know?
Well, I like looking at those images. They're I don't know, they feel really interesting to look at.
It's the lost future. It's the lost idealist future from the late 80s and early 90s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel like that's actually
Southwest Plaza in Denver. Okay.
That's actually Sneal's stuff kind of relates to that in a way. It's kind of
interesting.
It's kind of like it's like this idea that like the absurdity of like what we think is good, like that this life is good, and he's like, have you looked around? It's like a complete mess, and it's basically like that, and it's like taking that type of sort of stance of like there's these like kind of sort of like mocking this kind of normalcy that everyone's like, no, everything's cool, everything's fine. And you're like, it's not fine, it's not good. Like, have you checked this out? That's kind of like where that's kind of how me and him, I think we meet in a certain place, and a lot of our aesthetic kind of joins there.
Yeah. 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 And the absurdity will carry us through.
Yeah, hopefully. At least the laughter will get us keep from crying.
Right on. Okay.
Right on. Well, dude, awesome, man. Thank you so much for your generous amount of time and talking to us. And
man, it's been my pleasure.
It's you have been a regular mention on the podcast, so I figure we better get the story straight.
Right.
Your name comes up quite a bit.
Oh, that's nice to hear. I really appreciate you guys taking time to talk to me and listen to some of my music. It's really sweet.
Yeah.
Well, been a fan for a very long time, and I'm looking forward to hearing everything that's about to happen.
Oh yeah, got some stuff coming out. I don't know.
Let us know when that comes out.
For sure.
We'll repost it and stuff.
Thanks. Yeah.
Awesome.
All right, guys.
Man. We'll take folks out. Right.
You're breaking up
Yeah,
quite a bit.
sorry.
We'll put in a nice little. Okay, all good. Well, we'll plop in a nice little outro for people to go out on. But thanks again, Michael. Great to talk to you, man. I
thanks
really
to
appreciate
both
your
of you
time.
guys. All right, have a good night.